Here's the big deal. I read that we topped 21 trillion with a T recently on the national debt. Not a good place to start. But yet, there's a lot of fruit involved in this story. Apples and oranges. Everyone wants to blame the tax reform. Tax reform is paying for itself. Revenues are up over 1%. The problem is spending's up 4 times that amount. Dr. Tom, what can we do about this, and how did it get out of control?
Well, you're not going to do anything about it because there's not the political will in Washington to actually make those hard choices. And the thing that ought to be scaring people and awakening them is the bid to cover ratio decline from 10 years ago to now, and what that says about confidence in us being able to borrow in the future. The Treasury said they're going to borrow $750 billion more this year than last year. And most of that's associated with spending increase. So there's no discipline. So we have a structural problem in Washington. Doesn't matter which party's in charge. What happens is we keep spending money that we don't have on things that we don't necessarily need. And the consequences of that in the long run is a bust in terms of our ability to borrow money.
You know, and Senator or Doctor, the problem I have is this president really pushed tax reform, and many believe that's a good thing. It jump-started the economy. But the issue is, in the route to getting that done, he signed a bill that was just too big with respect to how it contributed to the debt. Your thoughts?
Well, I think what he did is set a pattern for Congress that they can push him over on spending. And so he has to reestablish the fiscal discipline, which means if they send him a bunch of appropriation bills this year that are above what they were last year, then what he's got to do is veto them. And he's got to say, no, we're going to hold the line. We're not going to increase spending. What we're going to do is eliminate waste, we eliminate duplication, eliminate fraud, and he can do that. But I think a critical mistake was made signing that first $1.3 trillion supplemental bill.
But the issue is it practical? Is this possible? In other words, part of what he's jockeying for, of course, with the current minibus bill is not to go through the appropriation process for the military. But those that aren't on his team are going to try to add exactly the things that you don't like. So what is the strategy to get it over the goal line?
The only ultimate strategy is to have a constitutional amendment that requires fiscal discipline for Washington, which means you're going to use generally accepted accounting principles, which they never use. They cheat all the time. They're not accurate on their numbers. And number two is give them a period of time where they have to balance the budget. Then they have to have a super majority of the states say, yeah, you can spend more money than that. And that's the only way we'll ever control it. We have to have a structural change in how we spend money in Washington.